The devil's debt. He ruled the city's shadows, a man they set at ice where his heart should be. I was nobody. Just another face serving drinks to people who could buy and sell my life without blinking. I thought I could hide it. The pain. The marks his fists left like signatures on my skin. I was wrong. When my legs gave out and the world tilted sideways, I didn't crash into the unforgiving marble. I fell into arms forged from steel and sin. I never expected him to catch me. And I sure as hell never expected the King of Darkness to see my bruised wrist, his eyes igniting with a fury that could incinerate the world, and ask the two words that would set everything ablaze. Who did this? The bathroom mirror at Ember Lounge was cracked, a jagged lightning bolt splitting my reflection down the middle. On one side was the girl I used to be, scholarship student, art major, eyes full of dreams about gallery openings and design studios. On the other side was the woman staring back now, hollow-cheeked, trembling, trying to button her silk blouse without crying out. Aria Bennett bit down on her lower lip until she tasted copper. Her ribcage felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it, every breath a fresh wave of agony that made her visions swim. 3 more hours, she whispered to her fractured reflection. Just 3 hours, collect tips, go home, give him the money. She adjusted her collar, making sure the fabric covered the dark purple blooms spreading across her collarbone. She tugged the sleeves past her wrists, hiding the constellation of fingerprint bruises that marked her forearms like some twisted artwork. 5 distinct marks, 4 fingers on top, 1 thumb underneath. Derek Cross. The name used to make her feel protected. Now it felt like a noose tightening inch by inch. He was an enforcer for the Castellano operation, a mid-tier loan shark crew that operated out of the Bronx. Derek's entire existence revolved around making people understand their place in the food chain. And lately, Aria's place was under his boot. Bennett, you're on the executive level, table 7. Tony, the floor supervisor, appeared in the doorway, his weathered face creasing with annoyance. His eyes swept over her pale complexion. Jesus, you look like death warmed over. I'm fine, Aria said automatically, the lie smooth from repetition. Just need some coffee. Table 7 doesn't care about your problems. They want their bourbon delivered with a smile and absolutely zero eye contact unless they initiate it. Tony jerked his thumb toward the main floor. Big spenders tonight, corporate types, politicians, and, he lowered his voice, family. Aria's stomach clenched. Family, that's what they called them. The real power brokers, the ones who made Tony nervous enough to actually give warnings. Can't someone else? You want the tips or not? Tony cut her off. Because if you can't handle VIP service, there's 20 girls who'd kill for your position. She couldn't afford to lose this job. The tips from the executive level were the only thing keeping Derek from breaking her fingers one by one. He'd promised he would if she came up short again. Aria grabbed her serving tray, ignored the screaming protest from her ribs, and pushed through the velvet curtains into the main room. The Ember Lounge was designed to intimidate. Everything was dark wood, crimson leather, and crystal chandeliers that cast dancing shadows across faces that held secrets worth killing for. The air was thick with cigar smoke, expensive cologne, and the particular tension that came from too many predators in one room. Table 7 sat in the center of it all, elevated on a small platform like a throne. 4 men occupied the space. 3 of them were massive, the kind of big that came from genetics and violence, not gyms. They were laughing, loud and crude, their suits straining against muscles built for intimidation. But the 4th man sat in absolute silence. Dominic Santoro. Even Aria, who spent most of her time trying to be invisible, knew that name. The Santoro family didn't just control territory, they controlled the very concept of power in New York. Drugs, construction, waste management, politics. If money moved through the city, the Santoros got their percentage. Dominic was the heir, the next boss, the man they called the architect because of the way he dismantled rival operations with surgical precision. He was terrifyingly beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair swept back from a face that looked carved from marble, wearing a midnight blue suit that probably cost more than Aria would earn in 5 years. He wasn't drinking. He was watching the room with eyes the color of winter storms, calculating, assessing, cataloging every person, every movement, every potential threat. Aria's hands started shaking. She gripped the tray tighter, feeling her damaged ribs grind together. The pain was getting worse. She hadn't eaten in 3 days because Derek had thrown her dinner at the wall, screaming that she was wasting his money on food when she owed him so much. "Breathe," she told herself. "Just deliver the drinks and get out." She approached the table, keeping her eyes lowered in the submissive posture Tony had drilled into every server. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. One of the large men, she heard someone call him Bruno, looked up and leered. Well, look what we got here. You're skinny as a rail's sweetheart. They feeding you in this place." "Your drinks," Aria murmured, reaching forward to place a crystal tumbler of whiskey in front of Dominic. She leaned in, trying to set it down smoothly. But as she extended her arm, her torso twisted at exactly the wrong angle. White-hot agony exploded through her chest. Not pain, an electrical shock that traveled from her fractured ribs straight up her spine into her brain. The room lurched violently to the right. The chandelier above started spinning like a carousel. The jazz music stretched and warped into a distorted drone that sounded like screaming. "No," she thought, panic flooding her system. "Not here, please, not here." She tried to grab the edge of the table to steady herself, but her fingers were numb. The tray slipped from her grasp. Her legs simply stopped working, folding beneath her like paper. She fell and waited for the impact, the crash of her body against the marble floor, the humiliation, the fury from Tony, the beating from Derek when he found out she'd made a scene. The crash never came. Time seemed to fracture. 1 second she was falling, the next she was suspended in midair, held by an arm that felt like an iron bar wrapped around her waist. Dominic Santoro had moved faster than her eyes could track. He'd surged out of his chair before her knees even began to buckle, catching her with reflexes that seemed almost inhuman. His other hand caught the falling tray, setting it on the table without spilling a single drop. The entire lounge went silent. Every conversation died. The music faded. Every eye in the room turned to table 7. Dominic Santoro, the man who allegedly never touched the staff, who never acknowledged anyone beneath his station, was holding a waitress against his chest like she weighed nothing. Aria's vision swam in and out of focus. She was conscious, but barely, caught in that horrible space between awareness and oblivion. She could smell him, sandalwood, gunpowder, and something that reminded her of thunderstorms. He felt solid, immovable, like being held by a statue that somehow radiated heat. "Stay with me," Dominic commanded. His voice was deep, resonant, carrying an authority that made her body obey even as her mind spiraled. She tried to push away, mortified. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I'm so sorry, I just slipped. I'm clumsy. Please let me go." Dominic didn't release her. Instead, his eyes narrowed. He wasn't looking at her face. He was looking at her arm. When he'd caught her, her sleeve had ridden up to her elbow. Under the harsh chandelier light, the bruises were impossible to miss. They were vicious, deep purple and yellow marks in the unmistakable shape of a hand gripping too hard. 5 distinct pressure points where fingers had dug into flesh with enough force to rupture blood vessels. The silence at the table became suffocating. Bruno stopped laughing, his smile dying as he saw what his boss was seeing. Dominic's hand, The one not supporting her weight moved slowly. His fingers, scarred across the knuckles, barely brushed the skin just below the bruises. Aria flinched violently, a sharp whimper escaping before she could stop it. That involuntary reaction told Dominic everything he needed to know. When he finally looked up, meeting her eyes, Aria felt like she was staring into a furnace. His expression hadn't changed, still controlled, still calm, but his eyes had transformed. They were no longer calculating. They were absolutely murderous. "These aren't from falling," Dominic said quietly. The softness of his voice made it more terrifying than if he'd shouted. "Someone grabbed you, hard, recently." "It's nothing," Aria whispered frantically, trying again to pull away. Her voice cracked. "I bumped into a cabinet. I bruise easily. Please, sir, I need to get back to work." "You're done working tonight," Dominic stated. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a declaration of fact. He looked at Bruno. "Car, now." "Boss," Bruno blinked, confused. "Get the car." Dominic shifted his grip, lifting Aria completely off the ground as if she were a child. The movement made her ribs scream, and she couldn't stop the broken cry that escaped her lips. That sound seemed to flip some final switch in Dominic's mind. "No," Aria struggled weakly. "You don't understand. He'll be waiting. If I'm late, if the money's not there, he'll—" Dominic froze mid-step. He looked down at her, his face inches from hers. The intensity of his gaze paralyzed her completely. "He," Dominic repeated, his jaw clenching. "You said he'll be waiting. Who's he?" Aria's mouth snapped shut. She couldn't tell him. Derek had connections. Derek always said he knew people. What if he knew this man? What if telling the truth just made everything worse? "Nobody," she lied, tears starting to streak down her face. "My landlord, I owe him rent." Dominic stared at her for 3 long seconds, reading the lie in every trembling line of her body. He didn't believe her, but he didn't push. Not yet. "Bruno," he called without looking back. "Lock down this building. No one leaves until I know who hired this girl, where she lives, and every detail of her employment." He carried her through the stunned crowd like he was carrying something precious and irreplaceable. People scrambled out of his path. No one dared speak to him. No one even breathed too loud. As they reached the exit and the cool night air hit her face, the adrenaline finally gave out. The edges of Aria's vision went dark. Her head fell against Dominic's shoulder, and she heard his voice rumbling in his chest as he spoke to his driver. "Hospital or the estate, boss?" Dominic looked down at the unconscious woman in his arms. He saw the cheap shoes with holes in the soles, the frayed hem of her uniform, the exhaustion carved into her young face like someone had been slowly draining her life force. "The estate," Dominic said, his voice dropping to something cold and lethal. "A hospital means police reports, and the rat who did this goes underground. I want him found. I want him breathing when I find him, and I want him to understand exactly what happens when you touch something that belongs to me." He climbed into the back of the armored Mercedes, cradling Aria carefully. As the car pulled away from the curb, he gently pushed her sleeve up again, studying the bruise pattern with the same focused intensity he used when analyzing crime scene photos. "Who hurt you, little bird?" he whispered into the silence of the car. "Because whoever he is, he just signed his death warrant." Awareness came back slowly, like surfacing from deep water. The first thing Aria registered was silence. Complete, absolute silence. Her apartment was never silent. There was always reggaeton blasting from downstairs, always the couple next door screaming about infidelity, always the terrifying sound of Derek's footsteps on the stairs at whatever godforsaken hour he decided to come home. But this silence felt expensive, intentional. The second thing was the smell, not stale beer and Derek's cheap body spray. This was rich, leather, cedarwood, and something that smelled like money itself. Aria opened her eyes. The ceiling was at least 15 feet high, decorated with ornate plasterwork that probably belonged in a museum. She was lying in a bed large enough to sleep 6 people, surrounded by sheets that felt like liquid silk against her skin. Panic hit like a freight train. She sat up too fast, ignoring the shriek of protest from her ribs. She clutched her side, realizing with mounting horror that she wasn't wearing her uniform. She was drowning in an oversized charcoal cashmere sweater that hung to her knees. "Where am I?" she gasped. "What time is it?" Derek, if she wasn't home when he woke up, if his coffee wasn't made, if the tip money wasn't on the counter where he could count it. The last time she disappointed him, he'd held her hand over the stove burner until she screamed. She threw herself toward the edge of the bed, her legs shaking as her feet touched a carpet so thick it felt like walking on clouds. She had to get out. She had to get home before everything got worse. The heavy door across the room opened. Aria froze, grabbing a decorative pillow as if it could somehow protect her. Dominic Santoro walked in. Without the dim lighting of the club, he was even more imposing. He'd changed. No suit jacket, just a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars that told stories of violence. He was carrying a glass of water and a small white pill. He stopped when he saw her standing, those winter storm eyes narrowing slightly. "You should be resting," he said. It wasn't a suggestion. It was simply a statement of what should be happening in his universe. "Where are my clothes?" Aria's voice came out high and thin. "I need to leave, please, I can't be here." Dominic walked toward her with the measured pace of a predator trying not to spook prey. He set the water and pill on the nightstand. "Your clothes were destroyed," he said calmly. "They reeked of fear and that establishment's kitchen grease." Aria stared at him, horror-struck. "Destroyed? I can't afford new clothes, you don't understand. I have to get home. He's going to be." "He's going to be what?" Dominic interrupted, stepping closer. He stopped just within arm's reach. The sheer size of him made her feel like she was standing next to a mountain. "Angry." Aria flinched at the word. Dominic's entire body went rigid. He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement so she could see it coming. His hand didn't grab. It hovered near her shoulder, a gesture meant to ground rather than restrain. "Look at me, Aria." The use of her name startled her into meeting his eyes. They were intense, searching, seeing past every defense she'd built. "My doctor examined you while you were unconscious," Dominic said, his voice devoid of emotion in a way that made the words hit harder. 3 cracked ribs, severe dehydration, malnutrition, and your arm." His eyes dropped to the pillow she was clutching, which had slipped enough to reveal the bruises again. "He grabbed you there, often, and when you don't comply, he aims for the ribs because the marks don't show when you're dressed." Tears burned in Aria's eyes. Having someone describe her nightmare so clinically made it real in a way she'd been able to deny when she was living it alone. "It's not your business," she choked out. "You're making it worse. If I don't go back right now, he'll think I ran or that I'm cheating, and he'll—" "Do nothing," Dominic cut her off. The calm shattered for just a second, revealing the furnace beneath. "Because you're not going back to him, ever." Aria shook her head frantically. "You don't know him. He has connections. He knows dangerous people." A smile, dark and utterly terrifying, ghosted across Dominic's face. "Does he now?" He took another step closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. He reached up and with impossible gentleness caught a tear rolling down her cheek with his thumb. His skin was rough, scarred, the hand of someone who'd built an empire with violence. The touch sent electricity through her, fear mixed with something else she couldn't name. Something like hope, which terrified her more than anything. "Little bird," Dominic murmured, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. "You think the man hurting you knows dangerous people. He leaned in, his face inches from hers. "You're looking at the most dangerous man in this city, and as of right now, you're under my protection." An hour later, Dominic stood in his study, a room that smelled of aged scotch and ruthless decisions. Floor to ceiling, windows overlooked the estate grounds, currently being hammered by rain. He stared out at the storm, his reflection ghosting in the bulletproof glass. He hadn't felt this particular flavor of rage in years. Usually, his violence was transactional. Someone owed money. Someone broke protocol. Someone needed to be removed from the board. It was chess, strategic, calculated, empty of emotion. This was different. The image of Aria Bennett, so light in his arms she felt like she might simply dissolve, yet still trying to protect the monster destroying her, had awakened something primitive in him. A possessive, archaic instinct that roared she was his to guard, his to shield, his to keep. The door opened. Bruno entered, holding a manila folder like it was contaminated. "Got everything, boss," Bruno said. He didn't sit. He knew better when Dominic was in this mood. "Tell me." Bruno opened the folder. Aria Bennett, 23, orphaned 6 months ago. Father was Thomas Bennett, small-time gambler, poker mostly. Died owing 60 grand to the Castellano crew. Dominic's lip curled. The Castellanos, bottom feeders who operated out of the Bronx, dealing in predatory loans and small-time extortion. The girl assumed the debt. Yeah, stupid move, but she didn't want them breaking her old man's legs before he died. Cancer got him anyway. She's been paying interest only, barely making a dent. And the collector. Dominic's voice dropped to something glacial. Bruno tossed a photo onto the mahogany desk. Mugshot. Slicked blonde hair, weak chin, eyes that held the particular meanness of a coward with temporary power. Derek Cross, Bruno said, practically spitting the name. Low-level enforcer. Rap sheet includes assault, battery, couple of DUIs. He's been staying with the girl for 4 months, making sure she pays, he says. Dominic picked up the photo, studying the face. Derek Cross. A parasite who felt powerful by crushing someone who couldn't fight back. Cold clarity washed over him. Where's he right now? Queen's apartment, waiting for her. My guys say he's agitated, keeps checking his phone. Dominic slowly crumpled the photo in his fist. Bring him to the Red Hook warehouse, the soundproof one. Bruno's grim smile said he knew exactly what that meant. You want him softened up first. No, Dominic said sharply. I want him unmarked. I want him confident. I want him thinking he can talk his way out. I want to watch the exact moment he realizes who I am and understands there's no walking away from this. Consider it done. Bruno stopped at the door. If he resists, break his hand. The one he used to grab her, but keep him breathing. He's mine. After Bruno left, Dominic poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. Neat. He drank it in one swallow, letting the burn center him. Then he left the study and climbed the grand staircase back to the guest wing. He found Aria exactly where he'd left her, perched on the edge of the massive bed, looking small and lost in his sweater. She jumped when he entered, her eyes darting to the door like she expected Derek to materialize. Dominic closed the door softly. The doctor said you need to eat, he noted, seeing the untouched tray of soup on the side table. I can't pay you for this, Aria whispered, looking around the opulent room. The doctor, the clothes, this room, I don't have money. Derek takes everything. Dominic walked to the bed, but didn't sit, keeping just enough distance to avoid crowding her. Money isn't the issue, Aria. It is for me, she shot back, a spark of defiance breaking through the fear. It's the only issue. I owe $60,000. If I don't pay, they hurt me. Her voice cracked. Derek hurts me. Dominic let the silence stretch, letting her words hang in the air. Derek Cross, he said the name like it tasted rotten. Low-level collector for the Castellano family. Aria went rigid, all color drained from her face. How do you know his name? Did I say it? Oh God, if he finds out I'm here. He's a nobody, Aria, Dominic continued, his voice hard. An insect. You think he's powerful because he controls your small world, but his world is insignificant and I own the ground it's built on. He walked to the window, rain streaking down the glass. He's waiting for you right now, getting angrier by the minute. Then I have to go, Aria said desperately. You don't understand, he won't stop. He'll keep coming. You're right. Dominic turned back to her, his eyes blazing. He won't stop on his own, that's why I'm going to stop him, tonight. He walked back to her, towering over her. Then he did something that clearly went against his nature. He crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. It was submissive for a king, but he did it to show her he wasn't the threat. Aria, look at me. She looked. His face was all sharp angles and dark beauty. I don't want your body, Dominic said, intensity burning in every word. I want your safety. You fell. I caught you. And when I saw what had been done to you, he reached out and carefully took her bruised arm, turning it over. It offended me. It offended every concept of justice I believe in. Derek Cross will never touch you again, he promised. I'm having a conversation with him tonight. What are you going to do? Aria breathed. We're going to reach an understanding, Dominic said vaguely. He'll learn that if he comes near you, he forfeits his life. It was mostly true. Derek was currently being transported to a warehouse where he'd learn exactly what happened when you touched something that belonged to Dominic Santoro. But Aria didn't need the bloody details. Aria searched his face for deception. Found none. Just fierce, protective intensity that made her chest ache. So I'm free, she whispered. You're free of the debt, Dominic corrected. But you're not safe. Not yet. The Castellanos sold your debt because they fear me. But now they know I have an interest in you. That makes you a target. Cold fear gripped her heart. So what do I do? Dominic stood, the rain silhouetting him against the window. You stay here. I have a position for you. A position. I need someone to manage my private collection, Dominic said smoothly. He didn't need an assistant, he had an army of them. Art, rare books, acquisitions. You mentioned you studied design. You have the education. I'll pay you a real salary. You can save money. Go back to finish your degree. Aria's mouth fell open. How do you know about my degree? I know everything about you, Dominic said. I know you were top of your class before your father got sick. I know you sketch in stolen moments on your breaks. He walked back to the bed and extended his hand, an offer and a lifeline. Stay, he said. It sounded like a plea wrapped in a command. Let me protect you until you're strong enough to protect yourself. Aria stared at his hand. Large, scarred, capable of terrible violence, yet offering her salvation. She looked at her bruised arm, the legacy of her old life. Then at the luxury surrounding her, the promise of something new. She knew deep in her bones that entering his world was dangerous. He was a crime lord, a killer, but he was also the only person who'd ever asked who did this, and meant it. Aria took a shaking breath. She reached out and placed her small hand in his. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. Dominic's fingers closed around hers, warm and secure. Electricity seemed to arc between them. For the first time, a genuine smile touched his lips, transforming his face into something breathtaking. Good, he said. Then let's get you some food. You're far too thin. The warehouse in Red Hook smelled of rust, brine, and approaching violence. It was a vast space lit only by a single industrial bulb swinging from a chain, casting sick yellow light across corrugated metal walls. In the center, zip-tied to a reinforced chair, sat Derek Cross. He wasn't bleeding yet. Dominic's orders. Derek twisted against the plastic restraints, his face flushed with indignant anger. Do you morons know who I work for? The Castellanos don't take kindly to people snatching their guys off the street. When my boss hears about this, you're all dead men. Bruno, leaning against a support beam, checked his watch. He didn't even look at Derek. Your boss is in Atlantic City with his mistress, and even if he was here, he wouldn't cross the street to piss on you if you were on fire. Screw you, Derek shouted, thrashing. I want to know what this is about. Is it the gambling debt? I told Tommy I'd have it next week. Or is it the girl? That useless bitch didn't bring home the tips, did she? The temperature in the warehouse plummeted. Bruno pushed off the beam, walking slowly toward Derek. If I were you, I'd stop talking about the girl. Why? Derek sneered, emboldened by the lack of immediate pain. She's mine. I own her debt. I own her. If she ran crying to some other crew, tell her she's dead when I find her. I'll break her other. The heavy rolling door at the far end screeched open. Rain hissed from outside. Then footsteps, measured, rhythmic, expensive leather on concrete. Click, click, click. Dominic Santoro walked into the light. He'd changed. Black dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, black leather gloves. He looked like an executioner dressed for a funeral. Derek's sneer died. His face went from flushed to chalk white in seconds. He recognized that face. Everyone in the underworld knew that face. Santoro, Derek stammered, his voice cracking. Mr. Santoro, I don't understand. I don't have any beef with your family. We stay in our lane. Dominic didn't speak. He walked to a metal table Bruno had prepared. On it, a steel pipe wrench, a pristine white cloth, and a legal document. Dominic picked up the document, turning slowly to face Derek. His expression was bored, almost disappointed. Derek Cross, Dominic said, his voice smooth and terrifyingly calm. You're a loud man. I dislike loud men. I'm sorry, sir, Derek gasped, sweat pouring down his face. Whatever I did, I'll fix it. I swear to God. You can't fix it, Dominic interrupted, because you broke something that doesn't belong to you. He held up the document. This is the debt agreement for Thomas Bennett, assumed by his daughter Aria Bennett, $60,000 plus interest. Derek's eyes widened. Wait, the girl. This is about that waitress, sir. She's nobody. She owes me money. I'm just collecting. You're not collecting anymore, Dominic said. He took a lighter from his pocket, flicked it, held the flame to the corner of the document. Derek watched in stunned horror as the paper caught fire. Dominic held it until flames licked his gloved fingers, then dropped the burning ash onto the wet floor. He crushed the embers under his heel. The debt is erased, Dominic stated. I purchased it from the Castellanos an hour ago. They were eager to sell. In fact, they were eager to disavow any connection to you entirely. Derek started trembling, reality crashing down. The Castellanos had abandoned him. He was alone with the devil. Please, Derek whimpered, all bravado evaporated. I didn't know she belonged to you. If I'd known, I never would have touched her. But you did touch her, Dominic said softly. The calm finally cracked, revealing the inferno beneath. He moved. Faster than Derek's eyes could track, Dominic grabbed the back of the chair and spun it, forcing Derek to face the table. He slammed a hand onto Derek's shoulder, pinning him. You grabbed her arm, Dominic whispered directly into Derek's ear. I saw the marks, finger imprints. You squeezed until you ruptured blood vessels. Did it make you feel strong, Derek? Hurting a woman who weighs 100 pounds. No, she wouldn't listen. She collapsed in my arms last night. Dominic's voice rose to a roar that echoed off the walls like a gunshot. Because her body couldn't handle the pain you caused. He grabbed Derek's left arm, the arm he'd used to hurt Aria. He slammed it onto the metal table. Bruno moved instantly, strapping Derek's wrist down before he could pull away. What are you doing? Derek screamed, tears streaming. Please, I'm sorry, I'll leave the city, I'll never see her again. Dominic picked up the steel wrench, testing its weight. You're right about one thing, Dominic said coldly. You'll never see her again, but I need to make certain you remember why. He looked Derek dead in the eyes. You used this hand to hurt what's mine. Now the hand pays the price. No, please. Dominic swung. The sound of shattering bone was louder than the rain. A wet, crunching snap that filled every corner of the warehouse. Derek's scream was inhuman, a high-pitched shriek of agony that went on until he ran out of air and collapsed against the restraints, sobbing and retching. Dominic dropped the wrench. It clattered onto the concrete. He peeled off his gloves, his face returning to that mask of cold indifference. Dump him at the ER, Dominic ordered Bruno. Tell them he had an accident, and tell him that if he ever speaks Aria's name again, if he ever thinks about her, the next time I won't aim for the arm. I'll aim for the skull. Yes, boss. Dominic walked toward the exit. The rain was still falling, washing the city clean. He felt strange relief. The monster in the chair had been dealt with. The debt was ash. Now came the harder part. Now he had to go back to his estate and convince a frightened bird that she didn't need to fly away. Aria woke up screaming. It was a silent scream, the kind that gets trapped in your throat when you're dreaming of falling. She bolted upright, gasping, her hands flying up to protect her face from a blow that wasn't coming. Aria, you're safe. The voice was deep, steady. It cut through her panic like a lighthouse beam through fog. She blinked rapidly, disoriented. Sunlight was streaming through the massive windows, bathing everything in gold. She wasn't in her dark, mildew-stained apartment. She was in paradise. And sitting in a leather armchair in the corner, reading a newspaper, was Dominic Santoro. He looked different in daylight. Less like a creature of shadows, more like a dark prince from some twisted fairy tale. He wore a crisp white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, charcoal slacks. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were alert, watching her carefully. I had a nightmare, Aria said, her voice rough. I know, Dominic said gently. He set the newspaper aside. You were calling out a name, Derek. Aria flinched. What time is it? She asked, her heart still racing. Almost 1 in the afternoon, Dominic replied. You slept for 14 hours. Your body needed it. Afternoon, panic spiked again. I missed my shift. Tony's going to fire me and Derek if I'm not there when he gets home. Aria, stop. Dominic didn't move from his chair, but his voice carried command. You don't have a shift. I called the lounge. You resigned. Aria froze, 1 foot on the floor. You what? You can't do that. That job is the only thing. That job was killing you, Dominic interrupted, his voice hardening. You fainted from malnutrition and broken ribs. How am I supposed to pay rent? She stood up, ignoring the dizziness. Anger flared, safer than fear. How am I supposed to eat? You think because you're rich you can just rearrange people's lives? You just made everything worse. Dominic stood slowly, towering over her. He walked to a side table where a silver tray held a single document. Sit down, Aria. No. Sit down. She sat on the edge of the bed, defeated by his tone. Dominic handed her the paper. Read. Aria took it with shaking hands. It was a legal document, a debt transfer agreement. It stated that the $60,000 debt previously held by the Castellano organization was now held by Dominic Santoro. And underneath, stamped in bold red ink, paid in full. Aria stared at the words. The letters swam. I don't understand, she whispered. I paid it, Dominic said simply. The Castellanos accepted my offer. You owe nothing. Not to them, not to Derek. She looked up at him, confusion and terror warring in her expression. Why Why would you do that? $60,000 it's everything. To you, perhaps, Dominic said, leaning against the bedpost. To me, it's what I spend on a weekend. But why? She insisted, her voice breaking. What do you want from me? I'm not. She gestured at herself, flushing. I can't pay you back that way. Dominic's expression darkened instantly. He moved forward, his eyes flashing with offense. Do you think I bought you? I don't know, Aria cried. Men like you always want something. Derek said he was helping me too, and then he. I am nothing like Derek, Dominic growled. The dangerous edge was back. He dropped to one knee in front of her, a submissive posture for a king, but he did it to meet her eyes. Aria, look at me. She looked. His face was hard, beautiful, intense. I don't want your body, Dominic said, his voice low and fierce. I want your safety. You fell. I caught you. When I saw what had been done to you, it insulted every concept of justice I hold, so I corrected it. He took her bruised hand gently, turning it over. Derek won't be coming back. I had a discussion with him last night. Aria stopped breathing. What did you do? We reached an understanding, Dominic said carefully. He understands that approaching you again means forfeiting his life. He's left the city. It was technically true. Derek was currently in a hospital in Jersey City, his arm held together by pins and plates, too terrified to even speak Aria's name aloud. Aria stared at him, searching for lies. Found only dark, protective intensity. So I'm free, she whispered. You're free of the debt, Dominic corrected. He stood, walking to the window. But you're not safe yet. The Castellanos are cowards, but they're greedy. They sold your debt because they fear me. But now they know I've taken an interest in you. That makes you valuable, a potential target. Cold dread crept up Aria's spine. What do I do? Dominic turned back to her, sunlight catching the sharp angles of his face. You stay here, you work for me. I meant what I said, I need someone to manage my private collection. Art, books, acquisitions. You'll have a salary you can save. Finish your degree. Build the life you wanted before your father got sick. He walked back to the bed, extending his hand again. Stay, he said. It was both offer and plea. Let me protect you until you're strong enough to stand alone. Aria looked at his hand, scarred, capable of violence, yet offering salvation. She looked at her bruised arm, the past, then at the golden room, a possible future. She knew instinctively that his world was dangerous. He was a criminal, a killer, but he was also the only person who'd ever asked who did this, and actually cared about the answer. Aria took a deep, shaky breath. She reached out and placed her hand in his. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. Dominic's fingers closed around hers, warm and secure. Something electric passed between them. For the first time, a real smile touched his lips, transforming his entire face. Good, he said. Now let's get you breakfast. You need to eat. 3 weeks passed like a dream Aria was terrified to wake from. Her ribs healed. The hollow look in her cheeks filled out, replaced by healthy color. She spent her days in Dominic's library, a cathedral of knowledge with first editions worth millions. It was peaceful, safe, beautiful. And every evening, Dominic would find her there. They developed a rhythm. He'd arrive home from whatever business kept him away during the day. He'd find her among the books. They'd talk, first about literature, then about art, then about dreams and fears and the strange space between darkness and light. She learned he played the cello. He learned she loved thunderstorms. The tension between them grew like a living thing, lingering glances over dinner, his hand on the small of her back when he guided her through a room, the way he said her name like it was something precious. Dominic treated her like she was made of glass, precious, fragile, breakable. But Aria was starting to feel less like glass and more like a woman who wanted to be touched. Still, peace in the underworld is fragile. One evening, Aria was alone in the library, shelving a massive leather-bound volume on Renaissance art. The French doors to the terrace were open, letting in the cool night air. She heard footsteps, not the measured tread of guards. This was rushed, clumsy. She turned, instinct prickling. Hello. A figure detached from the shadows on the terrace. Not a guard, a man in tactical gear but without the Santoro insignia. He was holding a suppressed pistol. Aria dropped the book. It hit the floor with a thunderous crash. The man raised the gun, aiming at her chest. So this is the little bird. Don Santoro's gone soft over a piece of. Get down. The voice thundered from the doorway behind her, Dominic's voice, but raw with terror and rage. Aria didn't think. She dropped to the floor. Bang. A gunshot shattered the library's peace, but it didn't come from the intruder. The intruder's head snapped back, a spray of red painting the curtains. He crumpled, dead before he hit the ground. Aria screamed, curling into a ball, covering her ears. Heavy footsteps ran toward her. Strong arms scooped her off the floor, crushing her against a heaving chest. I've got you, Dominic's voice was ragged, shaking with fury. I've got you. He held her tight, his gun still smoking in his other hand. He looked at the dead man, then at the open terrace doors where alarms finally started blaring. Dominic's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated war. BRUNO, he roared, his voice shaking the walls. Bruno burst in, weapon drawn, 3 guards behind him. They saw the body. They saw their boss holding the girl like she was his last anchor to sanity. Lock down the entire estate, Dominic commanded, voice deadly calm now. Every entrance, every exit, sweep every inch and get the car. Where are we going, boss? Bruno asked, eyeing the dead Castellano hitman. Dominic looked down at Aria, who was trembling in his arms, face buried in his shirt. He tightened his grip. We're going to war, Dominic said quietly. The Castellanos didn't just break our truce. They came for my heart. He looked at Aria, really looked at her, and realized the truth of his words. She wasn't just a girl he'd saved. She wasn't Charity. She was the only thing in his entire dark world that mattered. And for that, Dominic whispered, pressing his lips to her forehead, I'm going to erase them from existence. The war lasted 4 days. To the outside world, it looked like a gas main explosion in the Bronx and some unfortunate gang violence. But inside the Santoro estate, it was suffocating silence. Aria spent those 4 days in the panic room, a reinforced bunker beneath the wine cellar. Bruno stayed by the entrance, grim-faced, checking his phone constantly. Is he alive? Aria asked for the 100th time, clutching her sketchbook. The boss is hard to kill, Miss Bennett, Bruno grunted, but worry creased his scarred face. On the morning of the 5th day, the steel door hissed open. Aria scrambled to her feet, heart in her throat. The air changed, charged with the static electricity that always preceded him. Dominic walked in. He looked like he'd walked through an inferno. His tactical gear was torn and blood-stained. A bandage wrapped his left shoulder, already seeping red. His face was bruised, unshaven, his eyes hollowed by exhaustion. But he was alive. Dominic, Aria gasped. She didn't care about the blood, didn't care about the violence clinging to him like a second skin. She ran across the room and threw herself at him. Dominic stiffened for a heartbeat, as if surprised she wasn't recoiling in horror, before his good arm wrapped around her, crushing her to his chest. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling deeply. It's done, he rasped, his voice raw. The Castellanos are finished. The organization is dismantled. No one will ever come for you again. Aria pulled back, her hands framing his bruised face. Her thumbs traced the rough stubble. You're hurt. It's nothing, Dominic said, trying to pull away. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes, not fear of death, fear of her. You saw what I am, Aria. You saw the violence. I'm not a prince in a castle. I'm a monster. He walked to a small sink, pouring water with a hand that trembled slightly. I've arranged transportation, he said, keeping his back to her. A plane leaves for Santorini tonight. I have a villa there, secure, isolated. You'll have money, a new identity, a life where you never have to hide in bunkers or watch men die in front of you. Aria stood frozen. You're sending me away. I'm setting you free, Dominic corrected, turning to face her. You're light, Aria, I'm shadow. If you stay in my world, my darkness will eventually consume you. I can't let that happen. Aria looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the monster he believed himself to be, but she also saw the man who'd caught her when she fell, the man who'd paid a fortune to free her, the man who'd gone to war because someone threatened her. She walked slowly toward him. The fear that had ruled her life, fear of Derek, of poverty, of pain, was gone. In its place burned something new, something fierce. You asked me once who hurt me, Aria said, stopping inches from him. Dominic nodded, jaw tight, and I dealt with him. You did, Aria whispered. She reached out and took the glass from his hand, setting it down. Then she took his scarred hand and placed it over her heart. But you never asked me who saved me. Dominic's breath caught. You think you're the darkness, she said fiercely. But you're the only safety I've ever known. I don't want Santorini. I don't want a safe, empty life hiding from who I really am. She stepped closer, pressing her body against his. I want the man who caught me. Dominic stared down at her, his legendary control shattering. A low sound rumbled in his chest, half growl, half surrender. If you stay, he warned, his voice dark and possessive, you're mine. Forever. There's no walking away from this life, from me. I'm not walking away, Aria smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up the dim bunker. I'm already home. Dominic didn't speak again. He simply claimed her mouth in a kiss that tasted of war and victory and promises written in blood, sealing a bond stronger than any contract. 6 months later, the neon sign for Ember Lounge flickered against the night sky, but the line to get in wrapped around the block. Tonight was the reopening gala under new management. A sleek black limousine pulled up to the entrance. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Bruno stepped out first, opening the back door. Dominic Santoro emerged, devastating in a tailored midnight suit. He turned, offering his hand to the woman inside. Aria took it. She stepped out, and the crowd went silent for 3 heartbeats before the whispers exploded. She wore a gown of deep crimson silk that hugged every curve, her back exposed, her hair swept up to reveal the elegant line of her neck. She wasn't the pale, terrified waitress anymore. She stood tall, her eyes sharp and confident, her hand resting possessively on the arm of the most dangerous man in New York. They walked toward the entrance, the same entrance she used to sneak through, terrified of being late. Ready, Dominic murmured, leaning down to her ear. Aria looked up at him. She looked through the glass doors at the spot near table 7 where she'd collapsed, the spot where her old life ended and her new one began. She tightened her grip on his arm. I'm ready, she said. Dominic smiled, that smile reserved only for her. He led her inside, past the bowing staff, past the stunned patrons, straight to table 7. The king had returned to his court, and this time the queen walked beside him. Sometimes in our darkest moments, when we feel like we're falling with no one to catch us, salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Aria Bennett learned that safety doesn't always look safe. Sometimes it looks like danger wrapped in expensive suits. Sometimes it looks like a man willing to burn the world down to keep you from harm. What about you? If you were in Aria's position, would you have taken the plane to Santorini, chosen safety and solitude? Or would you have stayed with the dangerous man who saved you, knowing his world would never be peaceful? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story grabbed you, hit that like button. It truly helps us create more content like this. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next dramatic journey. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next story.